Welcome everyone to our 54th Kitchen Table Conversation. My name is Felix Martinez, and today we're going to having the pleasures to start a series of sessions where we are going to introduce the community participation project called the Don't Buy It Project. To give you a quick overview, the Don't Buy It Project is an initiative aimed to ending the demand of sex trafficking and other forms of commercial sexual exploitation through the We Are All Connected community learning and engagement curriculum. This curriculum is a resource for men and others in the community who want to be involved in the local response to end sexual trafficking, but who are unsure of what are their roles to play in this. So, uh, in this series, our goal will be to introduce the curriculum to conversations about our values, beliefs, and help us understand how, through our connections, we can identify strategies that can help us transform the conditions and the root causes that allowed sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation to exist. So before we start this series, let's start laying the groundwork transformation by introducing ourselves and the organization that we work with. This will help us start creating connections between each other, start understanding why we are all connected, and even when we understand that we're all independent, we're also part of this change, and we're all responsible for the well-beings of others. So I will quickly introduce myself first, and then we'll continue with the rest of the folks here. I'm super excited for this conversation. And again, my name is Felix Martinez. My pronouns are him and his, or él. In Spanish, I work for Esperanza United as an engaging men and boys program specialist. Esperanza United is a national Latino organization that mobilizes Latinas and Latino communities to end gender-based violence. Formerly known as Casa de Esperanza, Esperanza United was founded in 1982 by a group of Latina leaders as an emerging shelter in the city of St. Paul, Minnesota. Today, 40 years later, we continue the groundwork of our community strengths and wisdom, and as we serve Latinos and Latinas locally and nationwide. So thank you, everyone. I will pass it to our friends right here. So thank you.
All right, I'll hop in. Hey, everybody. My name is Sean Hayes, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And I am coordinator of the Don't Buy It project at Menace Peacemakers, and we're located in Duluth, Minnesota. And I'm just really excited to be here with all of you as usual, and then to share a little bit more about this programming that is dear to my heart and part of my personal story as well, and just to learn more about that this helpful tool.
Hello, everyone. My name is Serrano Robinson. I use he, him, his pronouns, and I'm the Youth Restorative Program Coordinator here at Menace Peacemakers. So I'm glad to be back. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. My name is Ed. I use he and him pronouns as well. I'm also here at Menace Peacemakers, located here in Duluth, and I have really enjoyed being a part of Don't Buy It project stuff over the course of the years, and so it's a real treat to be connected and talking with you all about it.
Awesome. Well, as always, it's a privilege and joy to be with each of you and all of the folks who are able to tune in as we're live here. And it looks like our friend Roderick is possibly going to be joining us in a minute here too. So we're having some tech issues there. Let's see if he can join us in a minute here. But as we're figuring that all out, we want to just remind you that as you're watching, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear as you're listening and hearing our stories and the things that we share in this conversation, how that impacts you. How does that connect to you, to your story, to your family and community? And so please feel free to comment your questions and stories if you want to share that with us as well. And we'll try to bring that into the conversation here today. But one of the very first questions we wanted to start off with, because when we're thinking about the Don't Buy It project, as Felix mentioned, there's 4 different phases of this curriculum, this resource tool. And the first phase is kind of what we're focusing on here today. It's sort of like an introduction to the project as a whole. And also that the first phase of Don't Buy It project is really about participants who are part of it. We are talking and sharing stories about our values, about the ways that we learned about masculinity, the ways that we learn about patriarchy, as well as the stories and our experiences around violence against women and children and all gender identities. And so, starting off this conversation, one of the first questions we wanted to ask and hear from all of you about is how and maybe where did your journey begin with the movement to end gender-based violence? And I'm going to start us off here because, as I mentioned before, the Don't Buy It project is actually how I got plugged into this movement. It was like years ago, before I was working at Menace Peacemakers, probably about 7 years ago now, that a friend of mine had shown me a flyer, and it was like, free class, Don't Buy It project, and I always have been someone who loves learning, and especially if there's a free opportunity to learn about something that's interesting to me, I like to take advantage of that. And at the time in my life, I, was newly engaged. So I was starting to think about, what type of husband do I want to be to my partner? What type of father in the future? And just generally, like, what kind of guy I want to be in my community. And so just the timing of this class starting and then getting to connect with Sarah Curtis and Mallory Thorne were the facilitators of that first class. And we met like once or twice a month for an entire year. And it was a really educational experience. I mean, there's a lot of learning that I did. I really didn't know much about human trafficking. I didn't know much about what commercial sexual exploitation was or what that meant or how that was impacting people in my community. I had no idea. And so a lot of that learning sort of like got me into this movement, right? A job opened up later at Menace Peacemakers, actually kind of right around the time that the class was ending. And it was like, okay, I'm going to go for this. And then got hired, and sort of a little bit of the rest of that is history. But, on a deeper level, I think when I think about the type of man I want to be and the fact that I want to be involved in this work to end gender-based violence, it just feels very connected to a deep part of me. And just getting to explore these questions of like, how and why did we get involved? What does it mean to be a man who is healthy and who is building relationships in community in a good way, and who's also showing up in a supportive way as well at community events and different things like that. So I think for me, I have a deep gratitude that, that friend showed me that flyer years ago, because it really has, shifted the path that I was on and still on, towards, being a part of building safe and inclusive communities for all folks. So I will pause there, and that's sort of where we want to go first, guys. So how, where, why did your journey begin in this movement? And anything you'd like to share, we'd love to hear.
Well, I can go. It's kind of a fun question to get to answer, because there's so many different ways of thinking about it. And part of the answer for me is that as young as I can remember, I was a little kid with an amazing an amazing mom and dad. In my case, a mom who was doing all sorts of good things in community and stuff. And I just, as an only child, and I loved to connect with people. And I remember what it was for that to be so much fun and so connected, and for it to really not matter who the people were that I was connecting with at that point in time. And so, that's where I literally start from. And I guess my journey in the beginning of being in the movement to end gender-based violence comes from the reality that, as soon as you start to, get into school, and even before that, you start to learn ways of being. This is how boys are supposed to be. This is how girls are supposed to be. This is what gender is supposed to be. Different ways of talking about, thinking about women and girls. Some not so healthy ways of learning about how to be in a relationship with, like, those sorts of things were just a part of, what the media and, other people in community would teach one another. So it was a part of my story of being a boy. And so by the time I got out of the town that I grew up in, I still, like, felt really strongly loved so many different friends and people in my life, cared about their well-being and all that kind of stuff, and was participating in some stuff that was harmful or hurtful. And both of those things were true all at once. So when I started to get out into the bigger, broader world, I got to go to school and do things in a variety of different communities. The issues that women would talk about on campus and in community, and the way that, whether it was I got to do some restorative justice work in Northern Ireland, or whether it was other communities in the United States, like the issue of gender-based violence just always rose to the top of the conversations that people were having about community. And I remember sort of feeling like shaken to my core about, like, oh wow, there's a bunch of things that I've sort of like picked up over the course of time that are not actually in alignment with who I know myself to be, who I want to be. And also, this stuff is like, it's literally creating conditions across the country and the world that are harming people, killing people, and it's systematic. And I was really motivated and wanted to find a way to get involved. And I was lucky that a shelter here in Duluth was hiring. And so I literally just sort of like leapt into work to address gender-based violence as a means of trying to participate in balancing back out and getting back into the wholeness and the responsibility and the goodness of who I knew I am and who I knew I could be. And very much interested in how you do that with your friends and your family and your community as a whole, and with the society, and what that looks like in bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger circles. And I don't know that has been that's been figured out, but I feel like we all have the chance to do so much cool stuff to build community and help other people also think about and be discerning about the parts that are in alignment with who they are, and things that have been picked up over time by our society that cause harm. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Ed and Sean. I think it is fascinating to listen to your stories and realize, how we can connect to each other, how sometimes your impact or whatever you're doing can impact others. And I think that's the importance of sometimes sharing information, how our journey started. And listening to Sean saying, obviously, when he started, I was part of that same retreat. I think it was 2015 or 2016. I'm not sure. It was around those 2 years, and listen to Ed identifying in college, certain things and the effect, that could have as you as a person, and also the impact you can have in your community is huge. My journey started, like I mentioned before, it was in that retreat invitation by the Men and Masculine Folks Network, and remember that was the first time I had this type of conversations about masculinity. It was a space where I didn't know anyone. I was there by myself. I was show up with an open mind, trying to learn a little bit about a topic that probably never was discussed in my house. In my house, we always had good values of like respect, but in reality, there was a lot of uh, patriarchy. In my community. There was a lot of privilege that I earned just because I was a man that was taken advantage. But even that I knew I could identify them, I didn't know what to do, or I just decided to be silent. So in that retreat, I remember having this conversation, feeling alone, judged, being vulnerable for first time, and at the same time thinking, and understanding the harm that patriarchy was causing in my daughters, because at that time I have already two daughters that helped me understand that all those unhealthy habits that I have, they're causing harm to them, and not only to my daughters, but also to my spouse, also to my mom, all the women and girls in my life that I love and I adore. So for me, that made me make that first step, to reflect on myself and make me understand that if I want a better future for my daughters or my spouse, I need to start in a point. And that was my point, just being involved in this opportunity, in that retreat, just because I also want women and girls in my life to live in a world where they feel respected, they feel strong, they have the same opportunities as men, and how my decision, how me being a better role model, how can hopefully inspire other men in my community to take a step and make a change in their lives. And that step can be done in your circles first, and eventually, take it to a different level. So I did it. I used to work before I work at Esperanza United, formerly known Casa Esperanza. I worked also in the nonprofit business. I was a HUD approved counselor, so I worked mostly housing, financial counseling. So I have an idea of what my community was going through. When I say my community, is the Latino community and those needing the community. So when I had this opportunity to engage with these amazing men, learn about a little bit more about masculinity, what our community go through, and having an understanding, the other aspect of finances, I said, what, my community is struggling. We need to start making the right steps to ensure that future generations have a better future, better opportunities, where we can live in safer communities free of sex trafficking, commercial sexual exploitation, and where we all can be seen equal. So, of course, this experience just made me rethink, my life, my roles as a father, but also make me think what I can do, and that's why I make that choice to say, what, I'm gonna leave, that previous job that I was doing, as a housing counselor, and make one that even when I was making less money, I know the impact was stronger, and I was being a role model and showing my daughters that a man is not the one that, bring money to the house or to make that decision. No, the man is a man who's also vulnerable. A man is also someone who break those gender stereotypes and gender roles that exist, and it can show a newer masculinity that is different. It's not the typical that we learn, and it's a healthier and more positive masculinity. So yeah.
Thank y'all for going first on this question. I feel like just given my story and connection with this, it'll be jumbled. So like most things, just prepare for the verbal vomit. So I don't even think like I don't think at first I chose to be a part of this journey in real time. Like, cause yeah, like I always think about Sean Hicks. I literally just stumbled across being here. I'm not even gonna lie to y'all. I was literally working like 2 to 3 jobs while I was going to school, and I had a plan. I'm like, after I'm done with my 2-year school, I'm going to find a job because I found that I wanted to work with people. I've worked with like older adults with disabilities. I work with older adults in general. I work with like younger, and this is before MAP. I work with younger children. younger children with, disabilities, younger children that are low functioning, high functioning, even adults with, adult foster care with adults with TBIs and those things. So I actually had like, I did my due diligence of figuring out what group or what like, what demographic was really for me. So I'm not gonna lie, like to get into it, it stumbled, and maybe that's what the energy of life brought me, right? As I just stumbled across it, because I was literally just looking for a full-time job that was around youth development. So given what I wanted, MAP had that and then some, right? Because the things that we do are way more than the things that I thought about as far as youth development. So I just want to throw that out there. Like I didn't like, come there with like, suitcase, knowing what was going on. I kind of stumbled across it, like very childlike in my opinion. And then I was like, okay, I can do this. I feel like also at that moment in my life, I was very adaptable. Like I said, childlike, I was like really spongy. So like I was able to just like listen. I know like after like, getting initially hired and hearing like what they were all about, the mission, I was like, this shit actually is like really, really valuable to me and like really beneficial. So I can't like pretend like the mission came first. It kind of came second for me after a job. But once it came, I was like, I had to start to like, I think what most men should do too, I had to start to do some backtracking because it's not just all about present and future, it's about past as well. So off of that, then I started to backtrack like, all right, bet. Okay, I've had times where first year of college, right? What's cool? It's cool as the dudes who's going to parties, having sex with all these women. So I did that. I had to think about like, damn, I wasn't part of that, right? I was a part of that system where making people feel uncomfortable, making people feel like if it's a party that sex has to be involved, making people feel like, yeah, that there's something that needs to be given to me as a man. So I think that's immediately what I did. And that took time, like, and I really took like a lot of heartbreaking for me to look at myself. But I think that's really all you have in this world, just to look at yourself. Obviously, you can't hang yourself for it. But what you can do is educate yourself. So I really did have to chime into everything that I did, everything that I like, everything that I know, everything that I've seen. Like, sadly, yeah, I grew up with really no men in the house. Like, just me and my brother. My dad was never around. God rest his soul now. You feel me? I'm at a point of acceptance with that. My uncles. So that's why I was seeing with my backtracking, I started to be like, okay, damn, there was really no men in the house. Like, for whatever reason, these men weren't locked up. These were like living men in the community, like not around for the children, not around for the women. So I'm like, all right, damn, we are not nurturing like at all. And, I can see like we do that. And that's how harmful it is to like I can never disrespect my mom for being a single parent or my grandma for being the person to take me on first. Like, you would never fucking understand what a single parent is until you do that shit. Like, so I can never sit here. I don't have no kids right now for people who don't know me, but I can never pretend like I know at all. But that's just what I saw. Like, I also was the women showing me love. I also was the women, doing everything. The women cooking the food, the women doing everything. Like, and then I had to dig deeper, right? I had times where I literally don't watch my mom like physically fight, bloody mouth. And I'm really like confused. Like, what the fuck going on? Y'all really say y'all love each other? Like I said, my dad was never around. So, she had boyfriends and, married here. And, like, why the fuck is y'all? And I'm having time like, why the fuck is y'all why you put your hand? Like, I'm like developing these like thoughts, and I'm like, all right, so clearly my mom is like very like, and my mom has been through MAP once, so I don't expect people to like fully know her from being, which was dope for me, for her to come to the organization that I'm working at, because she's in New York. That's where I was born and raised. But a lot of people like don't know, like, she really strives to be an independent person because of what she's been through. And that's really what I saw. Like, I'm like, you're getting hurt because you want to be independent, because you want to pay for your own shit, because you want to be your own person. So for me, like, I really had to like kind of do the backtracking. Like, I think a lot of people in general, especially like men, we don't like to backtrack, right? We don't like to be the person who actually caused the harm that we're actually facing today and that other people are facing. So don't get me wrong. I really had to like backtrack. Okay, yep. I've had times where, I treated women like objects, where it's like, and don't get me wrong, I apologize if like any of my like my language is like triggering or if it's hurtful. I try to say it as it is so that way I can help people. But yeah, like, I've had multiple times where I have women around me and like, I'm like, if we're not doing this, then you're not for me. You're not a friend. Right. And that was very fucked up, very harmful to tell a human being like, you're only here because of this. And if this isn't happening, then we don't have no history. So lack of it so I think that's kind of like how it started for me. Like, I stumbled across that I wanted to work with youth, but then I was like, nah, that shit is right. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Like, heartbreakingly, I had to do those times to take back, to be like, no, I've treated my friends like X, Y, and Z, specifically my, women identified friends. I've seen my mom literally be physically hurt just from wanting to be her own person. You know, I've seen literally like men not be throughout the house, not be throughout the lives of children, and that's very, very harmful. So for me, I always think about like that journey. I would say it was kind of maybe placed on me because of like what I needed. I feel like that was something that was very needed in my life. Because where I lived, that man, I'm not gonna lie to you, like that's just like the culture. It's the culture to be the man. It's the culture. Like I remember my cousins and everybody, like I'm fucking 12, 11, where I should be worried about flowers and interest in what I want to do, right? Maybe that's the real reason why I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do when I got older, right? For some reason, I'm worried about women. And I come home from fucking school. My cousin, nothing about how was your day at school, cousin? It's how many B words have you fucked and have you started having sex yet? Or you're not a man yet, laughing and like, so you get ridiculed as well. But it's like, that's also not an excuse to the women who have to deal with that shit. So forgive me. I hope that it doesn't sound like that, but that's not an excuse at all. I'm just having folks understand that like I was never at a standpoint of being like talked to in a good way. Like from the beginning, I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I love my cousin. Like I will do anything for him and for them. But they were part of that. Like they were part of that. Like showing that men really are supposed to be one way, dominant, sexual, overly sexual beings. They get what they want. So I would say like that's kind of like where it started to begin. I had to do a lot of backtracking to be like, no, I've been a part of this. I've seen other people be a part of this. Like my mom had to like basically be in a negative, like always sit in a negative light because she wanted to be a full human being, right? Because the moment you tell somebody they can't do something, that's also allowing them to not be a full human being, and we forget that. Fuck roles and descriptions. Like the moment, like the very moment you tell somebody that they can't do something for whatever reason, and you try to stop them, you're not allowing them from being a full human. And I think that's something that I had to learn as well. Is like it wasn't only just me being like terrible and like very judgmental, very like very hypersexual in that way. It also wasn't seeing people as human. That's not what you do to a human. So forgive my lack of being able to answer this question, but I kind of just like stumbled across it and then really had to do backtracking because that'd be fucked up to be like, yep, I'm not the problem. That's all in the past. I know for a fact, y'all, that one thing I stand by is I know that you can tell somebody one thing when they were 7 and they may never forget that. That's the one thing I know for a fucking fact. So that's the reason why I backtrack is because I know that there's some things that are literally like sticking with people's minds forever. And sadly, it's because of me. And that's just like the accountability and the step that you have to take, like as a person, especially if you say that you care about this movement.
Nothing to apologize, Serrano. I think this is your journey. This is your story, and we value, we listen, and we appreciate what you're bringing to the table. So there's no reason to apologize. We got this young guy from New York. We have a guy from Puerto Rico. So you can tell how, people from different places, in this nation, we can get together, how we are connected in different ways, and we can end all working in the same goal, that is to stop the demand of sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. So it's very powerful to listen to the stories and listen sometimes why we make these decisions, and sometimes obviously it's because of the society, what we learn, what we've been exposed. And it's sad to hear and see some young folks, what they need to go through without realizing that I have some type of privilege, in my life. I was lucky enough to have my mom and my dad, and there's some other men out there that maybe grew up with their grandma or the grandpa, with their brother and siblings, So, I think we all have something to bring. And through these connections, we can see the power that we all have when we work together. And at the same time, understanding how patriarchy push you to make decisions sometimes that they don't coordinate, or they're not the same as the values that we learn when we're little. So the question that I'll have for you guys is, for you guys understanding this, what is healthy masculinity for you guys? How you see a masculinity in your lives, So I could answer, but I don't know if one of you guys want to jump first. Otherwise, I'll be more than happy to give you my perspective of what healthy masculinity is. So anyone want to jump in? Well, I can start. So for me, when I think in healthy masculinity, healthy masculinity is a masculinity that don't rely on the gender norms, the expectations that exist or that are created by the society. It's a masculinity that's not afraid to show their feelings, It's a masculinity where men are vulnerable, they're positive, and men that value women and girls in our society. And promotes equity. That's something that's very important. It's not that typical masculinity that we learn in the movies and the TV, that men are supposed to be strong, the men need to make the decisions in the house. A masculinity that's it's not healthy, just because it put a lot of pressure on us. You know, like I was sharing yesterday with Sean, is I know we normally utilize that men box, to when we having conversation about masculinity or healthy masculinity. I always see it as a backpack. All those unhealthy habits. That men don't cry, men are supposed to be responsible for the safety of everyone in the house, are things that I add in my backpack, something that I'm carrying every single day, and not allowed me to be the best version of myself, because I'm carrying all these heavy things that don't allow me to be vulnerable, that don't allow me to be a good man, just because I feel the pressure, like maybe Serrano was telling us before, like, you need to have a girlfriend, you need to have, sex, you need to do this, you need to drink, you need to use drugs to be considered a man in your community, or to be this or to be that. And it realistically causes so much harm. So when I think in healthy masculinity, it's putting all that aside, and being a man that break those stereotypes, that can rewrite masculinity and show a masculinity that provide that safe space to others, that's not afraid of making mistakes, that's not afraid to cry, that's not afraid to starting over, but it's a masculinity that's gonna allow me to make other men accountable when I see them, and making me responsible also to be a better role model, be a better brother, a better father, a better everything. So that's for me what healthy masculinity is.
Yeah, I think that I certainly agree with a lot of that, and appreciate the what I think Serrano was talking about, like some of the introspection and willingness to look back and learn and do our best to create some repair. I think that that's part of healthy masculinity as well. But it's certainly been a part of my of 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 my process too, is realizing, I mean, the painful process of realizing the ways that we learned to be, or the ways that we have been, have caused pain or harm and contributed in a variety of ways. So it is natural that we would be asking then what healthy masculinity is. And I think, like, for me, I first go to, like, the masculinity itself is a way that we express ourselves. It's a gender identity. And when we talk about all those things that we might, as men and masculine folks, all those things that we might be looking back on, unpacking, making sense of, they're part of the package of things that get included in masculinity in different ways that we learn to do, as a part of being men and boys and such. And so from my perspective, when I try to define what healthy masculinity is, I try to not be as, basically try to be as open as possible in thinking about that. And basically, if I am a person who identifies as masculine, and my responsibility to myself and others is to be somebody that helps bring life and goodness and joy and safety and, to the extent possible, comfort. I mean, all of these things are things that we go for. But I think healthy masculinity is, it's being in the balance and understanding that that we are in an interconnected relationship with all of the other people that exist in our communities, in our society, in our world, and we are in relationship with the rest of the world, the plants, the animals, all the stuff that makes life possible. And I think that healthy masculinity is taking a responsibility for nourishing those relationships and the impact that we have on them, and enjoying and nourishing ourselves in the process. And that would be the way that I would think about healthy masculinity. And it can look so many different ways. And I think we end up talking about healthy masculinity because so many parts of masculinity have been wrapped into the way that male dominance and white supremacy and having resources and power and privilege and pleasure and all of those things sort of flow from people who aren't, men, white straight men, to cover all of those categories, to have those resources and all that power flow from folks who aren't men to men. And so we're in the place where we're relearning and remembering, I think, how we can be in a way that isn't taking advantage of and profiting and pleasuring and all of those things off of the well-being and the existence of others that we share life with.
I can go real quick. There was a part that you said, Felix, I think on the previous question that I kind of like stuck to. I think you spoke about like the value of like people. And I can't remember fully like what you said, but like my connection to that was like, I think that was like a big point for me. Like in that first question was like, I identified like after going through like the backtrack, and I'm like, the value that I have now and the actions that I like put out are not the same. Like severely not, like not even fucking close. One end to the other end. So I think like that was when it really started. I'm like, okay, I really have to intentionally start to make my values and my choices actually match up. You can't say you value people and you're also taking from them. Bullshit, doesn't make any sense, right? Completely BS. So just thank you for helping me like kind of name that as well. I was thinking a lot about like what Ed said as well. Like I love that like expression of like, that's it. That's basically what it is, like an expression of who you are. Right. In that way, I love like that there was no like naming to what those things are, because it is just like the fluidity of it. It's being able to, and I think too, like what people don't realize is there's always a connection to like harm as well. Because that was my piece, and I'm like, yeah, no, masculine really is just like being able to express yourself or be who you are in a way where nobody's hurt. And that's the part that people forget. People really forget that. They're just like, what do you mean I can't do this? And I'm like, I'm not saying not to do that. I want you to understand how that creates somebody to be hurt. Like, you do not understand that. So for example, because people tend not to listen, right? Like, for example, when you're told not to cry, do you really think that is beneficial to other people and yourself? It's nowhere near not. Like, you can't think about those times. You have to also think about the times where you just like blew up because you weren't emotionally like checking in with yourself and emotions took the whole of you, right? I feel like we're starting to learn what it really means when it's like my emotions got the best of me. It's because yes, this is an ever long lasting fight. And if you don't fucking fight, and I'm not meaning like physically, if you don't like talk to yourself and pour that soda out and debrief and take a breath and go to therapy and cry, like these things are evidently going to hurt somebody else, right? So I think that's every example of like the toxic part that you can immediately connect to the harm of somebody else. And that's the part that like people seem to like forget. It's like, I'm not telling you to stop doing it. I also want you to realize like how that affects other people. Because the biggest thing about life is like we all should just be able to be the most like, I always say you ain't shit and you are shit at the same time. And you ain't shit because the day that you're gone, this thing that we call the earth is still going to keep spinning. So that's why you ain't shit. Now, the reason why you are shit and you are the shit is because you are the only version of you on this goddamn earth. There's nobody else. For me, there's nobody else at 5'11", 27 years old, grew up in Bronx, New York, moved at 16, now I work with, there's nobody who has that same exact thing down to the T. So we also forget that like we are literally, not like we are one of one, like we really are, right? So I think like that's the way of like healthy or masculinity speaks to me is like being able to express who you are in a way where nobody's hurt. Because yes, those moments when we decide, yes, I'm a man, so I don't cry. It evidently leads to you being angry, putting your hands on somebody or yelling at somebody, putting them down, making them feel bad. You know, if I'm not like comfortable in my financial situation because I'm a man, right? If for some fucking reason I got to make the most money and all the money, and you know, then I'm now like making my partner take less of a job, right? Or you know, I'm making my partner like, what if her interest is to become a doctor? And doctors make a lot of money. Let's be honest, right? I would be dimming her interest literally because of my fucking fragile ego. So I would be like, for example, I'd be like, hey, babe, like, you know, man got to make a lot of money and you make so much more than me. Like, that's literally like making her like go away from her own identity. Like, so you don't want me to like make, and we're doing it out of, no, we got to be men, we got to provide. Like, and you forget, you're basically telling somebody to no longer be who they are at the expense of your fucking feelings. That's it. Because in reality, we need money. It don't matter who the fuck providing it. Like, you know, so let's call a spade a spade. So I think like that's my opinion too of like of healthy masculinity. It's like being able to express yourself as a man in a way where you're nourishing others and nobody's like getting hurt by it. Like nobody, not even yourself, like either. So
Dang. These are all really great answers. And I think that plays into kind of how I reflect on this question of like, what is healthy masculinity? And I know that, you know, this comes up a lot in our kitchen table conversations. We are really trying to like, I think that's what's coming to me is like, there's not just like this one set definition of healthy masculinity. Like it looks differently, like across cultures and different communities, in different geographic locations. And then like I also think about gender being on a spectrum, right? So like women, non-binary people, there's all these different gender identities that, you know, lean towards masculinity or move in and through masculinity. And so it feels really exciting to me that I think that was sort of one of my biggest learnings coming into this work was that, you know, there's no one right way to be a healthy man. And that feels so hopeful to me because I think it's like what you're saying, Serrano, I would never want anyone to sort of try to diminish the fullness of who I am, right? Because they think that I should be performing or acting masculine in different ways, right? Like that's not me. That may be you, you know, and I think that I think that, you know, as men and masculine people, as we connect in these deeper ways when we're having these conversations and building our friendships and relationships, like hearing these different parts of your stories, like that is like in the moment changing and adding to my own definition of what healthy masculinity is. And I can pick out those pieces that feel good for me, and the ones that, you know, obviously, you know, toxic behavior, unhealthy ways that we talk to people, to women and girls and other identity folks. You know, all of the ways that we show up in community each day, like we have that opportunity to literally perform our masculinity in a way that can like uplift people. Or we can choose to like use that masculinity to like push our way through, get ourselves to the front of the line, you know, really, really play into and use that male privilege that, you know, in the society that we live in, we're basically just given this, you know, this privilege and these, these sort of like bonuses that other folks aren't afforded. And so, you know, for me as a trans man and someone who came out later in my life as trans, you know, this is a question that I think a lot about. And I think that the cool thing is that each of us people who lean more masculine, who are men, who identify that way, like we all get to reflect on how we're showing up, how we're moving within that, how we're, you know, not trying to step forward all the time, not trying to take up all of the space in the room, but like allowing for other folks to have those opportunities. And yeah, I think I mean, I just really enjoy this conversation and thinking about these things, because it's like, I can't do this in isolation. And I think that's a big part of like masculinity. What we're taught about what it means to be masculine is like, we have it all figured out. We are the ones who make the decisions. We are the ones who bring home the bacon and, you know, all of these things, right? And I think just as we grow and share more about like how we're really feeling, it just has like the potential to just be so like, I think, world changing if men and masculine folks can like continue to build on and think about and reflect like, what does healthy masculinity look like, and how do I do that every day? How do I do that with my partner and family members and you know, the kids in my life? You know, my daughter right now is I'll wrap this up after I tell this little story, but my daughter is now very much into like Disney princess kind of movies, like loves the pink princesses, you know, Sleeping Beauty is a fave. And it's really interesting as a dad to try to think about, okay, I know there's some toxic stuff in here. There's a lot of gender roles in those early Disney movies. You know, a lot of our media like really portrays these roles and like teaches us this is how we show up. And I think it's so cool to like watch her as she's learning these things, and then to be able to have conversations with her to be like, actually, no, not just a prince and a princess can be together. Like princes can love each other too, princesses, and just like how we build up our youth to like let them know that there's so many ways to be like our whole selves in this world and in our communities. And I love that. It feels very hopeful to me. And I know that we're also kind of getting close to our time here. And so a little transparent facilitation with Felix here. I was thinking maybe the final question we could sort of wrap up with is, what is the role, or like, how do we each see the role of men and masculine folks in ending and preventing gender-based violence? Does that feel okay to you, Felix? Cool. Okay. So I've been talking for a while, so I'll just throw that question out there and see who wants to jump in first. So how do we see, or what is the role of men and masculine people to end gender-based violence?
I think I can jump in. When you ask the question, what's our role, you know, how we can come or become a better ally is, I think everyone can determine what's going to be their role, or how they can see themselves in this movement to end gender-based violence. Of course, my job as a facilitator most of the time is to help individuals to find their strengths and help them see themselves and see how they can see themselves taking action in their communities. And that can come in different ways. You know, you don't need to do a Facebook Live, you know, to consider yourself that you know, a better role model, or to be someone, a leader in this movement. I think we all have a role. We need to find those ways that find those strengths so we can take action. It could be from posting stuff in the internet, having conversations with your friends. You know, I think those are some basic, you know, things that we can do in order to start finding out what's our role. Reading a lot. If you ask me, you know, in 2015 when I start this, what's our role of men? I'll be more to those patriarchal, you know, things that they teach us. And now, 7 years later, of course, my perspective of life and how I see men and the role that I see in men is totally different. Especially now that I'm a father of two daughters, and I see the importance of me being a role model in the development of my daughters. So when they think a man, they're not gonna think in a man that is supposed to bring, the bacon to the home. There's the one making the decisions. I want my daughters to be strong. And in my reality, my perspective, that helped me to say, you know what, the role of man in my life is going to be teaching my daughters to be a man that also do laundry, that also clean the house, that break all those stereotypes that exist in our communities. And the same way I see it, I want everyone who's listened to the podcast to start thinking about, how you see yourself, what's that impact that you want to create in your family, in your loved ones, in your communities. And it's very individualistic, but doesn't need to be done alone. There's a lot of good allies, a lot of good organizations out there that can help you to make that decision and figure out what's your role. And a role could be just being there, being present, supporting those individuals doing taking action. You don't need to be an active member, but being there supporting, it make a huge difference, especially in this topic of masculinities, a topic that's really hard to discuss, is really hard to have, because men don't like to talk about their feelings. Men don't like to talk about being vulnerable. And when we create safe spaces and we allow men to be the best version of themselves, it's easier for them to realize how they see themselves. But going back to the questions, what the role of man could be many of them. It could be many of them, but in my recommendation to people is to read, to get more involved, to listen to survivors also of domestic violence, gender-based violence. Listen to the stories. Start creating those connections. That's one of the things that we're trying to create with this series of session, is to connect, to realize how our impact can not only benefit my circles but also communities in general, and and the world. Just being a better role model, involving more men, and being more vulnerable. I think the role, there's many ways to be engaged, but I think it's a very individual journey. And my suggestion is for everyone to understand, you don't need to do it alone. So there's a great organizations, like I mentioned before, out there that can help you get to that point where you feel comfortable and you can see how you can make that first step. So yeah.
You go, Serrano.
All right, I got you. I'll try to go quick. So thank y'all for all those responses. I feel like the one of the few things I'm thinking about right now, I'm trying to keep it quick because time is of the essence, is to be like, identify like that you can change like your values, that you can change the things you think about. You can change what you were taught. And maybe like, I'm saying this, like maybe it's not your fault that you were taught that, but have that be like, have that not be the end all be all. I feel like there's a lot of people, especially men, who feel like, well, I'm just like this, so I kind of got to die like that. And it's like, no, if that don't feel right, you can change anything you need to in life. And sadly, I remember like going back, because I was like raised in like violent, cultures and things like that. So I went back to like the hood where I was born and raised. I always go back to just like, that's where my brother lives, and I just like, family in there too. And a friend of mine, this is not on like particular like gender based, but it's just on like violence in general. My friend was like, he's like, he basically kind of tried to like call me a liar or a hypocrite. And he was like, how can you like work with these kids when like, violence is something that you did? And I'm like, because that's the word did, right? Like that did is very, very powerful in that context of what you just said. And that's the moment, is because like I am no longer that person, and it's going to stay. And I'm going to intentionally make sure it stays like that. So I think that's like what people don't see too, is like, you don't have to like maintain to be this person your entire life. Like, and one, you're not like a demon, like, none of that. You're somebody who's still in the community, who still has a part, who still has a role. So I think identifying that changing of roles and values can, not even roles, just values and like how you think, it exists. You do not have to be the end all be all at all. And then like, I say like tapping in, I call it like tapping in, but it's more so like looking back, how I said earlier. And it's looking back at your role in all this, like that we call like harm, right? Like, and identifying. And I think another thing too that's good for men, but easy for men, is like our pride will allow us to lie, right, when we think about certain shit, right? Because you have to be honest. Like literally just now when I took a roll back, I had to be honest. Like, yeah, I was very harmful to this person. But men, we have this sort of thing called pride and ego that immediately when we think about it, we put an excuse or a rhyme or a reason to why we did what the fuck we did. And what does that do? That makes everything all okay, which is not. So I think in terms of when you're looking back too, like be honest with yourself, call a spade a spade. You know, if you were being harmful, if you were being like, if you were acting in ways that inflicted harm on others, say that. Like pride should not be in the way of repairing harm too. So.
Yeah, thank you for all of that. I guess I would just add to the equation maybe some of the obvious, but like as far as the role of men in ending gender-based violence, I think one part of it, there's like the layer that is the obvious base, that is, you know, there isn't actually a role or a place for men's use of violence against women and girls. Or, I mean, we can talk about violence in general, period, but in terms of gender-based violence, like as men, there isn't a place for the use of violence to dominate and control other people. And when people are trafficked, exploited in a position where they're being leveraged, you know, there isn't a place for, you know, taking our desires and our pleasures out at the expense of another person. So there's a part of this that's just about that piece where we need to make sure that we open our eyes in the ways that violence and dominance can play out in pretty common ways in society. Like one of our roles is just not to do that, and to encourage and help and other people to not do that as well. And then beyond that, I think, you know, we've covered a lot of like really good ground, but I would just add, I think that the role of men is to live really, really good, joyful, wonderful lives, and to find the ways that you bring you know, happiness and joy and good ideas and good work and all sorts of stuff into community and into your relationships. And that's a lot of that I think, you know, when I look around, I see like most men doing that, and it's like we need to continue doing that. And there's a way, for myself anyway, like no matter how long you've been doing this type of work, where it's like sometimes when I feel down, for instance, I can make a choice to eat a whole bag of potato chips and feel good for a second, and then feel really sick for a while after and have to deal with the consequences of it. Or I can make a choice to go exercise or meditate or pray or do things like this, and feel my energy come back to me as a result of that, because I moved in a way that was good for myself. It's the same thing in our relationship to gender-based violence and into relationship is, I think, you know, we continue to make choices. There are ways when I'm in disagreement, conflict in my relationship, where I can pitch a fit about it, complain, mope around, disappear, like those sorts of things that that many of which are common, and they're not like, you know, horrible. People don't, everybody mopes once in a while, like these things happen, right? Like that's a thing. But what are the ways that we can step into the thing that's actually generative, that actually you know, the moping is the bag of potato chips, actually. And there are more and less harmful decisions that we can make for ourselves. And so I think part of our role is to be thinking creatively about, really, how do I thrive and how do I help support the thriving of other people.
Oof, this is some good stuff. And I know our time is short here and we're wrapping things up. I would just say men and masculine folks have a role. And I think maybe as a starting point, our role is to try to figure that out. Like figure out a baseline. Where am I at? You know, do I feel like I'm living my life in a healthy way? Do I feel like my relationships are healthy and I'm, you know, a part of like a equal, equitable, safe relationship? And I think like these conversations are a great way to start too, whether we're having those with our buddies, you know, at sports night or, you know, gaming, whatever it is, like just asking that, what do you think about all this healthy masculinity stuff? You know, asking our partners, how do you see me showing up? Like how's my masculinity moving in our relationship, in our home, in our neighborhood? How's it impacting you? Like how's it affecting you and other people? And so I think just sort of, you know, starting from a baseline of just trying to reflect and evaluate, like Serrano, you're saying, look back, like when I look back, there's a lot of harm that I have caused to the women and femme folks and people in my life. And being open to accountability, being open to like acknowledging and admitting that like I'm not perfect. I make mistakes, I cause harm, I hurt people's feelings. And then like, what's my role? Like I need to go back to that person, right? And try to repair that harm. And so when I think about patriarchy, when I think about commercial sexual exploitation and trafficking and the fact that men are typically are the most, you know, statistically in those positions of using power and violence and control over people. There's a lot more of us, I think, that are not doing that. There's a lot of men and masculine folks in our communities who are kind, who are loving, who are joyful, who want to play and have fun, and who also want to learn and be open to learning and hearing other people's stories too. And I think all of this, all of what y'all have shared, this entire conversation, I think, can be a great way for folks to sort of start having these conversations in your own lives. And we definitely encourage that. And if you want to reach out to us and just be like, how do I start a conversation? We would love to talk to you about that. We would love to connect with you. If you're asking some of these questions of yourself, reach out to us at Men as Peacemakers, at Esperanza United. And we would love to connect with y'all more deeply. So we're a little over time, so thank you to each of you for being a part of this conversation. Just an introduction and sort of the first phase of our Don't Buy It project 4-part series that we're going to be doing. We'll let you know when the next one is. So stay tuned for those updates. And thank you again for joining us for this 54th live kitchen table conversation. We're so glad that you were with us, or if you're watching this after the fact, hello, thanks for watching and joining us. Our next one is going to be on Thursday, January 26th. At 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, live right here on our Facebook page. So we hope that you'll be able to join us then, grab your lunch or a cup of coffee and come and sit down and join the conversation. And we also want to thank our funding partners for all of their support and partnership in these conversations with the Don't Buy It project and all of the work that each of us are doing in our own ways to end and prevent gender-based violence. So thanks again for joining us. Don't forget to like our Facebook page, find us on YouTube. We're all over the place. And yeah, just take care of you. Take care of those around you. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. All right. See you later.